Chapter 20. When Emily took Angela's invitation to spend the night at her place, she didn't expect much. She had seen and lived in worse places with her father, and it didn't surprise her that she slept on the floor of a two-room shack in the middle of the woods. But Angela had taken her in, and she didn't see why she should invade her privacy by asking why she stayed in such a remote place. Emily woke, but Angela had been out and killed her breakfast. Angela knew the ways of humans, and she tried to make her feel comfortable, even if Emily slept the night on the floor. Angela walked into the room carrying a tray from the bar. She had a smile on her face showing dazzling white teeth. "Did you sleep well last night? Here, I cooked you something." She handed Emily a plate with a half-cooked piece of meat. She didn't know or wanted to ask what it was, but she had berries and an apple on the plate. Taking the plate, Angela watched at Emily, and when Emily ate everything on it, Angela felt good. "Do you want to come with me to the club? Nero didn't come back last night." "Does he do that often?" Emily inquired. "Sometimes. He's out hunting." "I wouldn't let Harper go out hunting without me," Emily said in her naive manner. Her voice was sounding like a newlywed, wanting to be with her man every day. "I would go with him." "But you can't hunt with him. He's a werewolf, silly." "A what?" Emily choked on the piece of half-eaten apple. "A werewolf." "Oh shit." Angela's hand flew to her mouth as if a bee flew in it. "Didn't he tell you?" "I can't believe he didn't tell you." She scratched her head and blinked her eyes. "What was he supposed to tell me that he didn't?" Emily said, watching at Angela search for words. "It's not my place to say." "You have to ask him," Angela's voice awed and impatient. She walked to the closet and pulled out her only black leather jacket, putting it over a black shirt. Her pants, black, skin-tight, fit her like skin. "Do you want to come with me to open the bar, or stay here until Harper comes back?" "I want to go with you, of course. I'm afraid to stay here alone. There isn't anything out there but trees and more trees. I'm a city girl, and I don't believe in werewolves. But I'm keeping an open mind. And yes, I want to go with you," she said, her eyes wide, looking out at the thick forest behind Angela's house. Angela and Emily hopped into Emily's Range Rover parked near Angela's red rust-colored Jeep. It took 10 minutes to pull up in front of the rusty nail. When Angela opened the car door, she raised her head and glanced around. Walking to the driver's side, she opened the door and said to Emily, "Stay in here, I smell something strange." "I don't smell anything." "You wouldn't because I'm a werepanther. I can see and smell better than you. You're a human." "I thought you were human too," Emily said. "I'll tell you about that later," Angela said to Emily as she stooped and strode around the side of the building. She disappeared, and Emily didn't see her. She decided to climb out against Angela's demands. As she came near the far side of the building, she heard a loud roar. She had to wipe her eyes to be sure of what she was seeing. It was a large panther and mountain lion, rolling and biting and clawing at each other. When the mountain lion caught sight of Emily, she rushed in Emily's direction, and Emily made a mad dash for the truck. She pulled, and finally it opened just as the mountain lion jumped on the hood. Then the panther hopped up and grabbed the mountain lion with her enormous teeth and pulled her from the hood of the car. They were pawing and biting each other and trying to scratch at each other. The panther had the advantage because of how large it was, but the mountain lion was more agile as it rolled and jumped on the panther's back, and then away from her sharp teeth and claws. Emily watched in disbelief, wondering if the cats had attacked Angela, and she was lying dead behind the bar. Emily sat and screamed, and then a man walked from behind the bar. He had only a pair of jeans on. His chest broad and arms were muscular. He walked up to the two animals and held them by the scruff of their necks, pulling them apart. "Stop it. Stop it now," he said to them as if they were his house pets and they had a misunderstanding, and they were fighting to see who would sleep in the master's bed. Which wasn't far from the truth. When he dropped them on their feet, they changed into two females, one tall with dark hair and the other with brown hair and shorter. They were both shapely as they stood in the nude. And one of them was Angela. "What the fuck is going on with you two?" Nero said, his voice sounding harsh and irritated. Nero. I thought you said we were exclusive to each other. You promised me that you weren't going to be with anyone else. Tonight is the full moon, and here you are with this bitch after you said you were out hunting. Go. I have to talk to Angela, Nero said, pushing the mountain lion. She stalked away, then glanced back. But before she left, she came running back and made one large swipe across Nero's face. When Angela went after her, Nero stopped her. Let her go. I'm the one to blame. Can you forgive me? When Nero turned to kiss a naked Angela, he saw Emily looking at him. His eyes grew wide. She's not supposed to see this. She's a human and she has to be killed. You can't do that. She's Harper's wife. But why is she looking at me with such fright in her eyes? Because Harper never told her what we are. Get her out of that truck and bring her inside. You have to put some clothes on. I feel as if I could fuck you here. The way you look at me. And you fought that werewolf for me, Nero said with a smile. He seemed pleased. She could have killed me, Angela said. He put his arm around her. Well, she didn't. He gave her a kiss, and walked up the stairs and opened the locked door, and left Angela to explain everything to Emily. Emily opened the door, Angela said, pulling on the car handle. No. You're going to hurt me. I'm not going to hurt you. It was what I was trying to tell you, and you didn't want to believe me. There are werewolves and werewolves in this area. You mean that Harper would bring me to a place where I could get killed and eaten by large animals, which turn into people, and then turn back to animals? I can't believe he would do that. I'm not going to eat you. We don't eat people. We are half human ourselves. Now open the door and come in. It's getting cold outside. Come in near the fire. You have nothing on and you're not cold? Angela said. I'm different. I'd say you are. I hope you are telling me the truth. If I wanted to do you something to you, I could have done it when you were asleep. She heard the door click, and Emily opened the door and cautiously stepped out. Walking with Angela, she stayed back a few feet and let her go first. Angela opened the door to the bar and entered. Nero had the bar ready to serve customers when they walked in. Angela scooted behind the bar and into the room at its rear. Emily sat at the bar shaking. Nero handed her a drink. She didn't know what was in it. All she knew was she needed it. Thank you, Emily said. That man of yours is a good werewolf and a good human. He got my friends and me out of jail and promised us all jobs. He didn't have to. Emily smiled and glanced up at Nero, who turned to the right to see 3 men walk through the door. From what Emily saw, they were just men. But Nero saw different. He saw 3 hungry predatory werewolves. Usually his pack would crowd the place, but since there was no more fights and pickups in the bar, which had been Nero's agreement with Harper, they didn't come around unless they were summoned by Nero, their pack leader. He never needed the pack more than now. And he wished Angela would stay in the back because she never knew when to act like a beta in front of werewolves. They thought the werewolves were only useful to fuck, not bring into their pack to mate with. Only Nero had made her the alpha female in his pack because he loved her, and she was a good fighter and useful when hunting, and she was always willing to have sex even if the moon wasn't full. Chapter 21. Nero had never seen them before. They were tall, and from what he heard they were riding Harley-Davidson motorcycles. He knew the only werewolves in the area who rode those bikes were from a gang of vicious werewolves who traveled across the U.S. bringing anarchy wherever they went. Stitched on their leather jackets were the name Chaos. He didn't have time to tell Emily to go to the back. They strode up to the bar. The alpha stood close to Emily. He was tall with white blonde hair and a pale face, but his chest broad and his legs long. On the side of his face, a cut from his eyes to his cheek, and then the scar disappeared down to his collarbone under his white t-shirt. Emily never looked him in the face. She kept looking at her glass. She felt the threat she posed. He slid near her, his nostrils flared, and he smelled her. You're a human. What are you doing here among werewolves? His voice stiff. She's with me, Nero said, meeting the alpha eye to eye. Last time I was here you had that werepanther. I didn't think that hellcat would let you have a human female. She doesn't tell me what to do, Nero said, eyeing Emily sitting twirling her fingers and keeping her eyes on her drink. If I remember correctly, you were nothing but a beta pretending to be an alpha. You were letting your pack do your fighting for you, the alpha said. The last time I remember you were a beta too, and you belonged to a larger pack, Nero said, not taking his eyes off the alpha. The two dark-haired werewolves walked around and stood on the left of Emily. Emily held her breath and blinked her eyes. Her cheeks flushed with worry and a bead of sweat fell from her brow. What had she gotten herself caught up in? She hadn't bargained on this. How could she survive where her life appears to be continuously threatened? She would get in the car and drive back to San Francisco and tell Michael she wanted out of the marriage and to tell Harper to fuck off. Leave her the fuck alone and don't come near her again. That is, if she didn't die between the walk to the car. I'm leaving, Nero. I don't want to be here when Angela. Before Emily could pronounce Angela's name, she appeared from the back room. Angela stopped in her tracks. She felt danger coming. And she knew Nero's body language. He was in a fight or flight mode. And from the hairs on his arms, he was ready for a fight he couldn't win. The threat was real, and she and Emily felt it. The alpha glanced up at Angela. I see you didn't tell me the truth. Because there is no way that this one would let you have another mate. Now who is the human bitch? I'm no one's bitch, Emily said, looking up at the alpha werewolf. He reached over to her and grabbed a handful of hair and brought her to him. He raised her to face him. Tonight you're going to be my bitch. I belong to Harper Samsa, Emily said with narrow eyes staring into his black eyes. He's an alpha just like you. I'm his and you can't touch me because we haven't mated yet. And he will kill you if you do anything to me. Nero and Angela tried to signal to Emily with their eyes not to speak any further, but it was too late. The alpha looked around to his betas and he laughed. They chimed in with loud laughter. So he hasn't mated with you. Then when I do, you will be mine because I've claimed you, and that Harper won't be able to do anything about it. Werewolves law. After I get a drink, I'm taking you outside in the woods and I'm going to fuck you hard. You're going to do what? I'm still a virgin. Emily believed the lie that no one wanted to have sex with a virgin. The alpha's eyes glowed. He would have her as soon as possible. He drank his whiskey and turned the glass down and took Emily with him as she kicked and screamed and bit his hand. The alpha laughed at her futile attempt as he pulled her by her wrist with her struggling to get away. Angela and Nero watched, unable to do anything because the two beta wolves were watching them, ready to pounce on them. Nero made one assessment of the situation and realized that he couldn't fight the two. And he and Angela were no match for the hardened werewolves. Trying to protect Angela would get both of them killed. When Harper returned, they would have to explain how they let a pack of werewolves come in town and defile Emily, or worse, take her, and then kill her after they all had a go with her. As the alpha dragged Emily by her arm around the corner of the bar, she bit his arm and he threw her to the ground. She sprang to her feet and broke into a sprint. She had been a runner in high school. That's how she got her scholarship to the university. I like when you run from me. I will stalk you, and that will make it sweeter. When I catch you, I want you to fight me. It will make it easier for me to enjoy your sweet cunt, the alpha shouted. Emily made it to the forest, but she didn't realize that she had made it easy for him to catch her. She stood behind a tree breathing hard and out of breath. When she turned, the alpha was standing in front of her. Screaming and running, Emily tripped and fell into a branch, and it lobbed her backwards, and she lay unconscious on her back. The alpha stood looking down at her on the ground. He stooped down and began ripping off her clothes. When he took the time to watch at her naked body, and when he placed his hands down to touch her face, a massive paw ripped across his face and back, throwing him into a tree. She's my mate, Harper howled, and you will never touch her or set eyes on her again. The alpha sprang to his feet and shifted, but before he could do anything, Harper had shifted and leapt into the air and on the Alpha's back. The Alpha turned around and around trying to throw Harper off him. But Harper sank his teeth into the Alpha's jugular, and he didn't release his teeth until there was no fight left in the Alpha. The Alpha fell to his knees and his body bent backward and then forwards. Dropping to the ground, the Alpha lay near his clothing lifeless, and less of an Alpha than Harper. Harper had been a werewolf for less than a month, but he had proven to be the best of the Alphas. He had fought hardened and cruel werewolves and prevailed. Weak and out of breath from the travel and no food, he reached down to pick up Emily and cradle her in his arms. He stumbled to the car and placed her in. Her eyes were still closed, but she was breathing. She was alive, and the Alpha hadn't touched her. She belonged to Harper, and Harper belonged to her. After Harper locked the car door with Emily inside to make sure she was safe, he looked around at the parking lot and saw 3 bikes. He knew 2 werewolves were still somewhere. And that somewhere was in the club. Harper, tired and limped, wasn't sure he could take on the 2 in the club. When he opened the door and Nero and Angela saw him, they changed as the 2 werewolves turned to see Harper. Angela and Nero soared across the bar on the backs of the beta werewolves, sinking their teeth in their jugular. It was over in a matter of seconds as the werewolves crumpled to the floor with blood oozing, and their bodies writhing and moving until their life drained from their bodies. I have to get Emily home. Is there a doctor close around? Not that I know of, Nero said. Maybe I can help, Angela said. You've helped me and I will never forget it, Harper said, looking at Angela. Harper turned to leave. Your home is completed. Everything is in there, furniture, everything. One of the workmen came by early looking for you. He left the keys. Nero reached behind the bar and threw them to Harper. He caught them in midair with a smile. Take care of this and that body in the woods. Will you, Nero? I'll be more than happy to. Harper rushed out of the bar and opened the car, started the motor, and took off on the dirt road and then the dirt top and drove to his gate. The locks hadn't been installed yet because the workmen were still building the stable and hospital. But the sign stood over the gate, SAMSAS Ranch. The sign just the way he wanted. This ranch would belong to his sons. Driving through the long concrete driveway, up to the door, Harper peered at Emily. She was trying to open her eyes, but she couldn't manage it. He scooped her up in his arms and took her to the front door, and although she didn't realize it, he was carrying her over the threshold. She was his bride. His bride. A bride for a werewolf, he murmured as he chuckled at the thought. He had to get her to bed. He lay Emily down on the large bed in the master bedroom and sat near her holding her hand. Then he called Michael. He answered on the first ring. Michael, it's Emily. I need you to call one of your doctor friends and have him get here as soon as possible. I'll pay whatever he wants, but I need him soon. I'll do what I can. Will you pay for a helicopter? Yes, anything. What happened? No. Don't tell me. I know too much now, and it's keeping me up late at night. When Harper closed the phone, he heard Emily stir. He moved closer to her, touching her hand and face. She opened her mouth and began biting him before she realized where she was and with whom. Emily? Open your eyes. She heard the voice of Harper. Where am I? You're with me. You're home. Did that werewolf do anything to me? I can't remember. Everything went black, she said with tears pooling in her eyes. No, Harper said. You know about werewolves? I know you're one. Harper relaxed. If the werewolf didn't touch me, I'm still a virgin and you don't want me. She glanced up at Harper. Of course I want you. I need you. I was a fool to tell you that. Can you forgive me? He glanced down at her. Do you still want to be my wife? How could I run from a man who wants to protect me from harm? I want to be with you for the rest of my life, she said. Harper leaned down to kiss her. Emily's mouth parted and his lips touched hers. The hunger from need and the kiss overwhelmed him. With his breathing erratic, he said, I have to go. I can't be with you like this. Like what? I have to mate with you. I want you too much. I'm afraid of what I might do to you. I want you too. She bites her lip and pulls him close to her. She placed her hands over his to touch her breasts as he kissed her. Harper feels her nipples, which are at a peak and pressing against his fingers. He passes his hands over them to feel the warmth of her perky hard breasts. His manhood rises. The heat and pleasure from the kiss reach both of them, and they are overcome. When Harper leans his bare chest over hers, a chill races through them. Do you think we should? I've been waiting for you all my life, Emily said, looking up into his deep blue eyes. His eyes no longer heated and the color of gold. He pulled his pants off and lay over her, and she opened her legs as he felt the warmth of her thighs, and then he kissed her nipples and placed his hand between her legs as she spread them. I don't want to hurt you, Harper says, pushing away a strand of hair from covering her eyes. You won't. And then she felt his manhood. Maybe I spoke too soon. But we'll get past that, she said, trying to reassure herself and relax Harper. His warm lips brushed against Emily's mouth as he placed his finger in her warm flesh, feeling her wetness. She quakes with anticipation. He can smell her scent, and he would never forget it. She is in heat, and he knows that he will have the family he dreamed about.